some mysteries, they really stick with you. They become kind of cultural icons, Jack the Ripper, D.B. Cooper, those kinds of things. Years, decades even, without any real answers. And then every so often, just when you think a case is going to be ice cold forever, something happens. A new clue, a new technology, and suddenly we're closer to the truth than we ever thought possible. That's exactly why we're doing a deep dive today into the Somerton Man. 70 years, that's how long this one's been around. But there have been some pretty big breakthroughs lately, and we're going to break it all down for you. We've got a really interesting mix of stuff to dig into, too. Historical articles, brand new reports, even some encyclopedia entries. By the time we're done, you'll be totally caught up, ready to make your own call on what really happened, ready to dive in.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so picture this, okay? It's 1948, December in Australia. People are relaxing on Somerton Beach, enjoying the sun, but then down by the seawall, somebody spots something off.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that they found a body. It was more like the whole scene was just strange. Like someone wanted it to seem like...
Cinched.
Exactly. He's dressed to the nines. Suit, tie, the whole bit. But there's no wallet, no ID, nothing.
And then, to make it even weirder, every single label in his clothing is gone. Like, someone carefully cut them all out. It's like whoever this guy was, someone wanted him to just disappear.
Oh, absolutely. And back then, clothing labels, those were a much bigger deal. They could often be traced back to specific stores, even individual tailors, removing those labels. It wasn't just about keeping him anonymous. It was about erasing any connection he had.
Which makes the stuff they did find on him even more of a head-scratcher, An unused train ticket to a nearby beach, a used bus ticket, some chewing gum, cigarettes, everyday things. But with no context, they just raise more questions than answers. Then there's the autopsy itself. Even that wasn't straightforward.
Right. Pathologist at the time, he actually suspected poison. Like what do they call it? A death by a ghost. Couldn't pinpoint the exact substance, though. Back then, toxicology wasn't as advanced as it is now. Could miss something.
Oh, wow. So it's possible he was poisoned, but they just couldn't tell for sure. That's wild. And to make it even more intriguing, the Somerton Man, he had these really well-developed calf muscles, like unusually strong. Was he an athlete? A dancer, maybe? Every little detail, even his muscles, just added another layer to the mystery. But we're just getting started. This is where things get really crazy. Because a few months later, they found this tiny scrap of paper. And that little piece of paper, that's what really sent this case into, well, a whole other dimension of strange. So to recap, we've got this unidentified guy, right? Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure nobody could figure out who he was. And he's found dead on this beach. Months go by and nothing. Then they find this tiny little piece of paper tucked away in a hidden pocket. And on it, 2 words.
Tamam shud.
Yeah, Tam Shud.
And you know what that means, right?
Hell.
It means it is finished, or the end.
Oh, okay. Kind of creepy, but...
It's a phrase from a book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's Persian poetry, right?
Exactly. And it's all about, well, life and death and the fact that time just keeps on ticking no matter what. Kind of spooky considering the circumstances, don't you think?
You're not kidding. But hold on, it gets even weirder. Remember those random things they found on the Somerton Man? Well, one of them was a piece of paper, like it had been ripped out of a book. And guess what? It was from a really rare edition of that same book of poetry, the Rubaiyat. They actually managed to track down the exact copy that page came from. Someone finally found it, and it had belonged to, get this, the Somerton Man. Case closed, right?
Not even close.
Well,
inside the cover of the book, a phone number. Someone had jotted it down in a hurry. And there was something else, too. A coded message.
No way, a coded message. Are you serious? Like a real spy movie coded message?
It sure seemed like it. And suddenly the whole case just blew up. We weren't just dealing with some random death anymore. Now we had secret codes, maybe a love affair, or even international espionage. Remember, this is 1949, right in the middle of the Cold War.
True. Back then, spies and secret messages, those weren't just things you saw in movies. It was real life. So the Somerton Man, suddenly he seemed a lot more interesting, a lot more important. What if he wasn't just some random guy who washed up on the beach? What if he was mixed up in something much bigger?
It wouldn't have been the first time. And you got to remember that suitcase, too.
Right. The suitcase. What about it?
The stuff that was inside, it just made things even more complicated. There was this coat, an American-style coat, and then there was this thread, a specific kind of thread, and it wasn't something you could easily find in Australia back then.
So it's like they find this guy in Australia, but the more clues they uncover, the less he seems like he belonged there at all.
Exactly. It's like trying to put together one of those puzzles, but all the pieces are from different puzzles.
Okay, so we've got the mysterious note, the secret code, the international intrigue. What else could there possibly be?
Oh, I'm just getting started.
Seriously. There's more.
Remember that phone number, the one scribbled inside the book?
Yeah.
Well, the police, they managed to track it down. It belonged to a local nurse, a woman named Jessica Thompson.
Okay, so they go to see this nurse. They show her a picture of the Somerton Man. What happens?
She freaks out.
She does, like, totally loses it.
Pretty much. Denies knowing the guy, but admits she gave a copy of the Rubaiyat to a soldier a few years back.
Hold on. So maybe, just maybe, this dead guy, he knew this nurse. And the book, the Rubaiyat, that's the connection. But why all the secrecy? Why remove all the labels? Why the coded message? And why was she so scared?
Exactly. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It's like everyone involved had something to hide. So we've got this mystery, right? We've got a dead guy on a beach, no name, nobody knows who he is, a cryptic note, a coded message, a terrified nurse. I mean, come on, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's like something straight out of a movie. And for decades, nothing. No answers. The Somerton Man was going to be just another cold case.
But then something amazing happened. Technology caught up with the mystery.
It's like something on a CSI or something.
It really is. See, I remember those super strong calf muscles on the Somerton Man?
Yeah, the ones that made everyone think he was a dancer or an athlete or something.
Exactly. Well, it turns out those muscles were the key. Back in the day, they made a plaster cast of his face, for identification. And some of his hair got stuck in that plaster. Fast forward to 2021, researchers, they took that hair and, get this, they extracted his DNA.
Whoa, really? They could get DNA from hair that old.
Technology is pretty wild these days, right? And here's the really cool part. They use this new technique called forensic genealogy. It's like, those ancestry websites where you can trace your family tree? It's kind of like that. But instead of names and dates, they're using DNA.
So they're looking for, long-lost relatives of this guy.
Bingo. They compare his DNA to these huge databases, and they start building out a family tree. And after years of research, a team led by Professor Derek Abbott, they finally got a hit.
They figured out who he was. No way. After all this time.
Yep. The Somerton Man, he finally had a name. Charles Carl Webb.
Charles Webb. So, do we know anything about this guy? Was he really a dancer? A spy, maybe?
Well, he was an electrical engineer from Melbourne. Not quite a spy, but definitely unexpected. And get this, he vanished right around the same time the Somerton Man showed up in Adelaide.
Okay, so maybe he went on a trip, ended up in Adelaide. But why all the secrecy? Why remove the labels? Why the coded message?
That's what everyone wants to know. And remember that name, Keene, the stuff in the suitcase. Turns out, Carl Webb's sister-in-law, her maiden name was Keene.
Get out. So maybe those weren't random items after all. Maybe they meant something to him, to his family.
It's definitely a possibility.
Okay, so maybe he went to Adelaide to see his wife. Maybe he was having some kind of secret affair. But how did he die? Poison, like they thought at the beginning.
It's still a mystery. I mean, we've been talking about all these new techniques, but some things are just lost to history. Some of the original autopsy reports, they're gone.
Oh, man, that's rough. But you know what really gets me? That coded message, the one in the Rubaiyat, did they ever figure out what it said?
Nope. People have been trying to crack that code for decades. Some think it's a love letter, some think it's some kind of secret message, and some think it's just a bunch of random letters.
It's like, even with all our technology, all our fancy DNA analysis and code-breaking skills, the Somerton Man still holds his secrets close. We might know his name now, thanks to some incredible detective work, but the rest of his story, why he was on that beach, how he died, what that message means, it's still a mystery. So what do you think really happened to Carl Webb, the Somerton Man? Head over to our website or find us on social media and let us know your theories.